So Everest came just that way, and then yes, that has been the biggest thing which I have worked hard after I got the thing, and then the results have again been much better than what we had anticipated.
Awesome. Mount Everest is considered to be Mount Everest. He has summited Mount Everest. He has done Super Randonneur, which is the ultra distances cycling races, which are 200, 400, 600 and long distance cycling races all in one calendar year. He has done ultra marathons like La Ultra, and he was a podium finisher there. He is also a Boston Marathon qualifier. And in fact, ladies and gentlemen, I have 2 pages of his achievements, which we will discuss during the course of this interview. Without further ado, let me welcome Mr. Rommel Berthwal. Welcome to the show, sir. Thank you so much for taking your time out today and gracing us with your presence.
Thank you so much, Nishant. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really honored, But then whatever you said, 2 pages, I think we can compress the same in 1 or 2 sentences. That would be enough, I think. Thank you so much for the introduction.
It is absolute honor because at Trifantry we are trying to bring athletes and inspiring figures from across the world, and you are our second guest today at Trifantry Chronicles. Our objective is to bring out stories and humble beginnings of people who have achieved amazing things in life, but we want to show that it's not where you've reached, but it's how you started. So thank you for coming and agreeing to do this with us. I would want you to start off with a couple of your biggest achievements and how what gave you the ideas to go out there and do that.
See, Nishant, first and foremost, it is not everybody plans everything in life. Especially in my case, I have not been a great planner. I've only focused on whatever I'm doing to do to the best of my capabilities. Results or no results has not been my prime focus, So that was one. And biggest achievement undoubtedly has been the Everest. And I would say it's not that I worked too hard to get Everest. It's just that because things were going correctly in my favor, so the environment acknowledged, and then I was given this opportunity, It's like you keep doing well, and God also gives you in return, whatever you've been doing well, and He keeps guiding you for future targets. So Everest came just that way, and then yes, that has been the biggest thing which I have worked hard after I got the thing, and then the results have again been much better than what we had anticipated.
Awesome. Mount Everest is considered to be one of the world's biggest, I think I would say, achievements, as well as biggest frontiers that people try and conquer, and people have been doing that for decades now. Very few have actually been able to successfully do it, and even less number of people have actually led their teams to the summit. So would you like to share some details about that, and how you were able to not only do it yourself, but many men under you and reach that peak?
Nishan, very, very valid point. It could only have come from a person like you, because there's one thing as being a team member and going and doing the summit and coming back all safe. And there's another thing which is, as a team leader, because team leader, immense amount of responsibility. You come from an army background, you understand, how the army functions, what is the kind of responsibilities and all are there, and the camaraderies and all. So this thing was clear in my mind, as a team leader, if I'm going, then if there's anything which goes wrong with me, it's acceptable. I'm responsible for my own self. If I lose my fingers, if I get frostbitten, it's my mistake and I am ready to accept it. But then if anything goes wrong with any of my team members, that will be a bigger shock for me, or a bigger responsibility. So being a team leader on Everest is, I would say, very, very challenging, much more than just an Everest. So that's why I feel, the kind of experience I've gained in those 2 months leading to the top has been immense. I have never had that kind of exposure in last 26 years of my endurance career, if I would say. And that has been a great achievement for me personally. I mean, not to prove it to anyone, but then personally, it has been a great satisfaction that I led a team of 14 to top of the summit. Everybody came back, no scratches, no frostbites, nothing whatsoever. And I feel very proud of that because last year there were 18 members from different teams all across in Himalayan region, that region of Everest, who lost their lives. Leave alone the number of people who had, various kind of injuries or had to be evacuated. Our team just did it, and as I said, much more than I could have ever anticipated. That was really lucky.
Before we deep dive into what it takes to actually, first of all, do this, think about doing this, and what it takes to go ahead and do this summit, I would like you to shed some light on why this is the most difficult endurance frontier to be achieved, and what does it take? Like, what is Everest, and why is it difficult, and why so few people actually do it every year?
Right. So Nishant, you are an endurance athlete. I have been doing a lot of running, be it ultra marathons, and other things. The main difference I realized in Everest and any other sport is if I am doing a triathlon, if I am doing a marathon, if I am doing any other thing like a trek and all, I can stop anytime. There have been so many DNFs on marathons or cycling, swimming, whatever. On Everest, the moment you reach 8,000 meters or 8,000, anything above that, which is called a death zone.
Okay.
So if anything goes wrong above 8,000 or 8,000 meters, nobody can help you. It's as simple as that. There's no helicopter which can come for your rescue at those altitudes. The only helicopters which come there are there at Camp 2 to pick you up in case of any emergency. Camp 3, you have an undersling, they'll throw a rope, you tie it to yourself, you get evacuated. But once you cross Camp 4, you're on your own. Nobody can help you. It's all on your own. So while doing a marathon, if I'm not feeling well, I stop. The medical van is going to come pick me up. I'll be fine in some time. On Everest, unfortunately, that's why you have about 200 odd dead bodies there, still lying there, because it's not possible to get those bodies back. It's so expensive.
Okay.
Right, and very risky. So that's the biggest difference. See, there's no DNF, there's no stoppage. You can just turn back, but then since you have invested so much of hard work and all, and unfortunately the ego takes over. You want to prove it to your family, your friends, and all sorts of things that you've come till here, you don't want to go back and say that you've been a failure. So that's why so many people lose their lives.
Okay. So another related question. I have seen a lot of people pursue Everest Base Camp as one of their bucket list or as a tourist sort of destination. What is the difference between doing a Everest Base Camp and then an Everest? I know it's a pretty juvenile kind of a question, but I want this to be addressed by someone who to be both.
So that's a nice question again, but unfortunately the answer is not going to be what generally people would like to listen. Because I remember one of my friends, he did an Everest Base Camp. We met him that time, and after the Everest, just one fine day, he asked me, "Okay, Romil, what is the level of difficulty on a scale of 1 to 10? Between Everest Base Camp and Everest top?"
Yeah.
So I told him, we cannot compare. It's not even one, I would say, because Everest Base Camp is fun. It's great fun. I had a great time.
Right?
Say again?
Everest Base Camp is essentially tourism, something like I personally think probably it's like a difference of enrolling yourself for a 5K run and then maybe doing a 100K ultra or something. I don't know. It's not fair to do this kind of a...
No. Yeah. So it's absolutely right. So that is the kind of difference. That's why I say everyone. I plan to take my family there on Everest Base Camp because that is one thing which is achievable. Anybody can do it with a little bit of training, little bit of thing. So I plan to take I had to take my daughter this summer vacation we were planning, but then because of COVID, it didn't happen. But then definitely we are going to go there on the Everest base camp, because again, your whole perspective changes. For example, we saw a family there from the US. There were 3 generations. One lady, her mother, and her daughter. 3 generations trekking together those 10 to 12 days. And it was a very, very blissful seeing a family coming together like this, and this kind of bonding and memories they'll carry all through their life.
Wow.
But the fun ends the moment you reach Everest base camp. After that, it is all pain. No doubt, whatever I may say now about, Everest and all, but then it's pain, no doubt.
Yeah.
Big pain.
I'm very sure. Mr. Romil, would you be kind enough to tell us, what does it take to dream about summiting Mount Everest, and how much time and what kind of physical requirements do you need? Like what should physical space you should be in right now, and how much time would you need to train for this kind of an expedition?
Okay, so as we understand, it all starts from where you are rather than where you want to be. For a person who is obese, he would have a different time frame to reach the top of Everest. For a person like you who's been into a lot of endurance, but then if I may assume that you have not been into mountaineering and expeditions, I would say it is fair to have a long-term perspective. There's no point hurry. So take a 2-year span, and from now in 2 years, I think you should be able to do Everest, provided you are focused. You do all the mandatory courses. You pick up expeditions right from Everest base camp to, start from 3,000, 4,000 meter peaks to slowly building up to 6,000, 7,000, 8,000. So I think it's achievable. Anybody can do it. It's only that you need to have that much focus and temperament to prepare, and of course that time has to be there, because it's not that you can do it with less amount of time. It's a process. You cannot skip those steps.
I think we can draw parallels from your journey of training for this kind of an expedition over a 2-year period, having that kind of mentality. Same parallels we can draw in the arena of long-term fitness as well, or maybe pursuing the goal of doing their first half marathon, or maybe a full marathon, maybe even a triathlon. Of late, what I have been observing, I've been into fitness for about 15 years. I've been running for 15 years. I've been into triathlons for a couple of years now. I've been training people. What I have seen when people come to me and they ask that I want to do a half marathon. Currently, I can't run, but I want to do a half marathon. But can we do it in like 4 months? My answer always is I don't want to sound condescending or anything, but my answer is no. You cannot do it. Yes, you can do it if you follow the right programs and you have that kind of mentality. But there are certain muscle groups, there are certain parts of your mind and body that need to be trained. It's not only about distance, it's also about technique, strategy, the will to invest time, money, resources, the biggest will to actually be coachable, be kind enough to learn things. If you already know that you can do something and you don't want to learn about it, then it just becomes very difficult. I think these are certain parallels that we can draw from anything long term. So the message to people, the viewers here is, if you are starting out in any sport, have long-term goals, have 2-year, 3-year kind of long-term goals. Do not rush into things. Like he had just mentioned that, if there's no need to rush. Isn't this true?
Right.
So
absolutely. I've seen people making the same mistake, the one you are referring to.
Yeah. So I would like to know one question which can be slightly iffy or maybe controversial, but how much money does it take to maybe do this kind of expedition of summiting Mount Everest? How much investment does one need end to end, from training to conquering?
From training to conquering, you're asking?
Yeah, or you can divide them. Please feel.
Okay.
However.
Okay. So broadly, if you want to go for Everest expedition, only the expedition is going to cost you close to 25 to 30 lakhs.
Okay.
And there's no upper limit. It can go to 1 crore. based on the kind of services you want for those 2 months of expedition. This is purely for those 2 months of climbing.
Okay.
You know, this does not involve your gear. This does not involve anything on training, coaching, nothing at all.
Okay.
So this is the kind of investment once we are talking about Everest.
Oh, and that is the 2 months of actually being there and doing it.
Correct. So the moment you leave Delhi or the moment you reach Nepal to back, you're traveling back from Nepal. So those 2 months is 25 lakhs minimum, and gear and all again is separate.
And what would a ballpark number, broad range of basic equipments would cost you 2 years prior to that? Give don't need an exact number.
So a decent gear for all these things, whatever things are required would cost about 1.5 lakhs or something. 1.5 to 2.
Okay. And training and everything else, nutrition and those things are separate.
Yeah. All those things are separate.
Okay. So this is something.
Plus, you don't do just Everest directly. You need to do a 5,000 meter or a 6,000 or a 7,000. For example, a 7,000 meter peak could cost anything about close to 2.5 to 3 lakhs.
Okay.
And a 6,000 meter would cost about 1 to 1.5 lakhs. So that way.
Okay.
So you need to do those steps, then only you'll be reaching the Everest,
Superb. And so like we had, when we started out, we were discussing various other achievements that you've done in endurance sports, including La Ultra scoring a podium in the most grueling race, which is 111 kilometers race, scoring that one, and then Super Andering and Ironman 70.3 Boston qualifiers. Which one of these challenges were one of your favorite ones, or the ones that supposed to?
See, I'll say Boston, because Boston was a turning point in my life.
Okay.
The day I ran the Boston Marathon, I remember still, it was a long-term dream. I took 3 years to qualify for that because my first full was 422.
Okay.
And then Boston I did was 3:7. 3:7 I did Boston. So it was, the moment I finished it, there was a big vacuum. It's like everything has been focused on Boston till then. And the moment you finish it, it's like, ab kya karna hai? There was nothing to look forward to. Before that, last 2 to 3 years of Boston, before going for Boston, it was all vacations we plan kar raha hai, to around Boston Marathon ki preparation, kis terrain mein jaake train karenge for that Boston. If I'm going to Andamans, I'm going and training on the beaches, ki sand training ho jayega, resistance milega, those kind of things. Everything was focused there. And I mean, work-wise also, I used to have that kind of program ki acha abhi if I've got work in early morning, then I'll do a late night run. So everything was focused there. So Boston was very close. And after Boston, you got a lot of confidence, ki acha yaar, the Boston ho sakta hai, we can try other experiments as well. So that's why I feel Boston was the closest, beyond doubt.
Wow. Okay. How was your training for Boston? Like, how much time did you train for it? I'll just put pause. So how was your training for Boston, sir?
So Boston was a long-term project. As I said, it was not a thing. Yeah. So Boston, what happened was I participated during those days. Once I qualified for Boston, it was only the Mumbai Marathon which was a qualifier.
Did you
present? So Boston I did in 2000. Boston qualifier I did 2016. 2016 Mumbai Marathon. I remember I was 8th in my age category that year, and that was the 3:10:28 was my qualifying time that year. So I could have done a year before that because my training was absolutely fantastic. Only problem was my race execution was not correct. Everything was good. Race beginning, adrenaline rush. I messed up I was getting too ambitious, and then I bonked kind of, and then I finished in 3:28.
Oh.
That's what the learnings are.
Yeah.
But then that's been the biggest learning, I would say. So 2 years before Boston, I kept on training well, and then last year once I bonked with the 3:28 time, then I went back again, started understanding what went wrong, how to change, and then after that it's improved, and it was, for a Boston, everything has to be in place, then only you can get a personal best.
Sure.
So nutrition, diet, strength training, endurance, cross training, you name a thing, I was master at whatever I could have done in those circumstances. So long journey, but then in the end, I was happy to get the results.
Wow. These are, I think, some of the achievements which help you in breaking your mental barriers more than just the physical ones. Once you cross the finish line, it's just that you get that feeling of being going out there, and you can do anything, and that's something that all endurance athletes keep doing over and over again by signing up for more races and pursuing them over and over again, right?
Very true, Nishant. So it's that
plan your next race, and what gets you going, and what are the kind of thought processes that you have before signing up for any of the races?
See, in my case, I do very, very limited events. I'm not one of those who would sign up every Sunday and participate, because I think that's not my kind of a thing of doing a lot of events. So the number of events is very, very less for me. Only thing is, whenever I prepared, I give it 100%. I do my best, be it La Ultra. So La Ultra, I have that podium. Then I did a 24-hour stadium run we have. So again, there was a podium. So all those previous races also, I have done my personal best in most of the races. And the reason has been that, I do 1 or 2 races a year, not more than that. Because I feel, the fun of training is to have good time enjoying the process.
Yeah.
Rather than only the final thing. So that's why I keep it very, very limited.
Sure. You might be observing a new trend in the running community, which is of doing non-stop 14 days run, or 30 days run, or 100 days runs, or X number of days of runs. What do you have to say about that, and the physical effects of that on the body as well?
Nishant, I would request to please change the question, because this is something I really hate it. 10 days of running continuously. See, if your body supports, it's good. It should not be that it's mandatory to run 100 days or 50 days. I don't see any benefits of that, because, at times, once you have a hard day in office, you've not had any sleep, any rest, and still you're pushing your body, then you're not doing any good to your body. It's only good to your ego, which you have mentioned that, at least 2 kilometers per day I'll walk or something. Personally, I don't subscribe to this kind of a feeling, but then if people benefit from it, it's up to them. I feel that, once your body says you're good to go, keep doing. If your body says, it's not good for you, you've had a tough day, or you've not had adequate rest, and if you're pushing, there's no point doing that.
Yeah.
You've got to be sensible.
I think because of the onslaught of the kind of data-driven, just the watch-driven, or these kind of contest-driven things, and then there is a social factor also that you would want to say that I've done this and this, but not focusing on the recovery and conditioning part of it would actually have long-term negative effects on your body. If you are looking to have sort of a career of, I say this over and over again to each and every athlete of mine, is that you have a 50-year-long vision about your endurance goals. Not 1, 2, but at least 50. There are examples of people running 100 at the age of 100, 105, 106 also. So this is something that you can literally do till the age of 100, or even beyond that. And if you continue to not take care of your recovery, conditioning, nutrition, and keep pushing it, there is a time when it might just break.
Obviously, that's bound to happen. So, I remember during my Boston, I used to log in 160 kilometers a week, which was only possible because my job and other things, they were in support. Somebody who's having a 12-hour shift or a 10-hour shift, obviously you need to focus your timing based on the kind of commitments you have.
Yeah.
Since I could afford it, doesn't mean that plan is going to work for everyone else. If you can manage, do it. If you cannot, then modify the plan accordingly.
Yeah.
As simple as that.
Well put, sir. What do you have to say for people who are just starting out and in swimming, cycling, running, or any sort of outdoor activities? What tips and tricks or motivation would you like to give this set of people who are trying to experience outdoor sports for the very first time?
Okay. So anybody who's starting, make sure the fun element has to be prime. You got to enjoy what you're doing, because if it comes as a fun aspect, then you'll be happy coming on the next day or after 10 days or after 15 days. But if you're pushing too much, if you're not enjoying the whole process, it's not going to sustain for long.
Yeah.
Right. So main thing in any endurance sport is continuity. Your discipline that you should be doing same thing again and again and again, and that will only come once you're enjoying the process. If you run behind better timing or pushing yourself right from the beginning or to show it off to others, then it's only short term. That's generally the case these days. More of selfie culture, Instagram and all, we all understand that.
Yeah.
But then make sure you're enjoying the whole process and you're committed to what you want to do, and make a group. Group activities this way really pushes you because tomorrow morning if you're committed to someone, you'll be more responsible of getting up in time and joining. So enjoy the process, and don't set too many targets right from the beginning. Target should be more on distance based, not time based. That yesterday I did the 5K in 30, today I should do 28. That doesn't happen. So endurance sports, it's more of a long-term thing rather than short and immediate gains.
Absolutely. There's a underlining, I would say, a missing point in most of the runners also in our Indian running community, which is people are not focusing on the strength and conditioning part of their training. Most of it is mostly about long runs on Sundays, short runs on speed runs, and a couple of them, and maybe tempo. And 6 days of training is what people focus on every day, about pushing. There is a missing point of strength and conditioning. What do you have to say about strength and conditioning, and being a BQ qualifier? How important is strength and conditioning in training?
Let me tell you, I also used to make that mistake earlier. But then in my case, good part was that being in the army for so long, automatically these things were in place. There were a lot of strengthening which was there. So my base was very good. That's why I could focus on building up a structure on that kind of a base which was there. But later on I realized, strength and conditioning, it's most important. 3 to 4 times a week, if you can manage, and if your target is, marathon. If you're doing a 5K, you can still skip it. The body's not going to have an adverse effect.
Yeah.
But then if you're training for a half or a full or any distance more than that, then it's important to have adequate strength built up in your training schedule. And that's where, it's good to have a good coach who can guide you well, who understands your requirements, and then you can, in conjunction, make a good plan out of it. Because if you skip this, then short term you sustain, but then longevity is not going to be there for sure.
That's why we have a lot of people falling out after doing their first race and all, and just saying that I cannot run anymore, it's not meant for me, I have pain in my plantar, I have issues in my lower back. It's probably a function of the way you have trained for it and the way you've trained for the race itself. When you've not taken...
Great point. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Very right. I would agree 100%.
Yes. I understand that you are in the process of transitioning from your current organization to the next phase in your life. What are your future plans, and would you like to share something about your new initiatives?
Sure. So in my case, I've had a great life, I would say. Great is also an understatement. I've had a memorable life. If somebody asked me to repeat it, even I would have doubts if I could relive the same kind of life I've had. And for that I would say I'm extremely lucky. Not everybody gets this lucky. We understand that. So if I have to leave that and come out of it, it has to be at par. Because if I join any corporate and all, I've analyzed quite a lot. I realized I'll not be doing justice to whatever I've done in past so many years. So I felt, something which I love doing it, I should be able to continue doing the same things in future as well. So the plan is to have a company which is already into adventure sports and all, and last year, once I was doing Everest, I met this company called Boots and Crampons. They had come with their clients to another peak called Mount Lhotse, which is again in that Everest region, and we have the same base camp. So I met these people, and sometimes you click well with a lot of people, and this thing actually happened with us. And then since then we've been interacting, and pretty soon, October onwards, I'm going to join them for the same, doing expeditions. Till now, the focus has been expeditions outside of India, be it Argentina, South Africa, or Russia, Australia, those 7 summits kind of things. But then because of the COVID, we anticipate that the chances of people traveling abroad is going to be a bit less.
Yeah.
So this year we are focusing on Indian expeditions in Uttarakhand, Himachal, J&K, and subsequently we'll go back to both India as well as abroad in few times to come.
Okay. I think we are both into the same similar sort of industry. I would say that that is being created as of now. It was
Right.
there, but it was more of a recreational or maybe kind of a hobby kind of a thing. But productizing fitness and outdoor activities is something that is happening now, and probably during COVID times and post-COVID times also, onslaught of outdoor activities and people preferring to do something outdoors is definitely gonna get catapulted, right? What are your thoughts on the growth of outdoor industry in the next few years? And when I say outdoor, I mean outdoor fitness. It could be
Right.
marathons, mountaineering, and expeditions and other such related areas.
Right. So Nishant, I feel this COVID has given a lot of time for us to think about how people have been living our lives. If somebody doesn't understand now, then nobody can help it.
Yeah.
But then it's a good pause to relook what you've been doing in your life, whether you've been going in the right direction and all. And I think after this, everybody should take a lesson out of it, that that in the end of the day, you're answerable to your own self. How your immune system is there, how you've been living your life. So these aspects people should learn, and after this, I think they should be more aware that you need to have a life rather than struggling and running behind something which is superficial.
Yeah.
We all understand it, but then generally people don't follow it. So this should be a good pause, and people should relook and go out, enjoy, explore, travel, build your endurance, immune system, because these are things which actually pay in you in long term. So this industry should take a pause and boom from now onwards. I personally very upbeat on that.
Yeah. On that thought, what are your thoughts on the integration of social and digital into getting started in the outdoor sporting sort of events, like for newbies who are looking to have a change of their fitness regimen from gym-based fitness regimen to maybe outdoor-based? Do you think digital and social is going to help in that?
See, gym-based and all, I've never been a fan of this. I think generally most of the endurance athletes prefer outdoors. Outdoors, it's so much of freedom.
Yeah.
Gym and all gives you a culture of being claustrophobic in a location.
Mm-hmm.
And I think gym and all is mostly my funda of gym is, somebody who's into bodybuilding, bulk and all. If you like it, please go ahead, do it. But then if you step out, there's so many things to learn, interacting with different people, learning what other people are doing, travel, go to different places, participate in marathons there, understand their culture. So this thing should come up from now onwards. Yes, digital is going to be there. People glued to such things. You cannot help it.
Yeah.
It's going to be there in future as well. But then with that, other things will also be playing a major role.
Right. Do you have you brainstormed on thinking like what are the couple of things that can help this mass sort of acceptance of outdoor? Like any couple of thoughts you have, what will help, like glamour or some kind of fancy events or live telecasts or anything like that? What massy kind of things will help in mass acceptance of getting out?
See, right now it's a difficult thing to start immediately, but then once things stabilize and all, I think there've been various formats of events which are happening, be it warrior races sort of thing which we have, Spartathlon or other things. So anything, and we have had, those races wherein they have last man standing type, keep running in loops of 5K or 10K and see who stays there for the longer duration. So different formats are very, very encouraging. People like it as an experiment, and generally we have seen, they stick to it once they try different things. So different formats, different things, anything which brings uniqueness to any sport or thing, like the stadium runs, initially it looks very strange, but then there've been good response in those kind of events. So I think it's good to explore and try different kind of activities.
Last week I was interacting with one of the ultra marathoners from US. His name is Ryan, and he was telling me, so this guy did Moab 240, which is a 240 miler race. So 381 kilometers of running in 86 hours. And he was the youngest guy to do it at the age of 20, 2 years back. Yeah. So he was telling me that the only issue that these marathons or these kind of events is that they are not very sexy, like American football or cricket for that matter, or IPL and all. So maybe or maybe a UFC, something can be worked around making this sport a little more glamorous or a little more exciting. It could be anything. I think some bit of it has started through Zumba. A lot of big chains are trying out Zumba and getting people to move. That's a good starting point for sure. But the couple of glamorous events or something which is which gets people entertained also, and then make them fit. Probably that's going to help in getting mass participations.
Absolutely. We have seen the evolution of running as well. Initially they used to be one run in, let's say, 6 months or a year. Now we have, multiple events on every Sundays. Just before the COVID, these things were there. So again, these things are going to be there. And then the more publicity these events get, the more audiences will come, the more people will participate. So that's why you have so many number of people. That's why you have restricted entry for Mumbai Marathon and all, because, the involvement is increasing and the number of participants is going up. So it's going to take some time, but then I'm sure it's got a bright future ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have reached to the last part of our interview. This is called as the rapid fire round. I will be asking you certain questions. You have to answer them in quick succession. So you'll hardly have like 5 seconds to think about it, if you want to think about it. And then we'll close this. Are you ready?
I think you should have given me the questions in advance, so would have been better, because I'm very poor in rapid fire aspects. Yeah, please go ahead.
Guys, this is not a rigged rapid fire. These are all.
That's what I'm saying.
None of the questions have been shared with Romilji. I will ask you a few questions. Okay, some of them might be controversial, not controversial. That's the perception of the listeners. It's up to them.
Right.
Okay, you will have only 5 seconds to think about it and respond. Are you ready?
I think I am.
Are you completely ready?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Ready? There's no stopping after that. It's like reaching the base camp and you can't turn back now.
Sure, got it.
Sure. Let's fire away. Rapid fire round with Colonel Romil. In order of preference, your favorite ultra sporting events in swimming, cycling, ultra running, mountaineering, or summiteering? In order of preference.
Mountaineering, ultra running, ultra cycling. Ultra swimming, I have not done much.
Okay. What do you like more? Marathons or ultra marathons?
Ultra, any day.
What is your favorite ultra distance?
Ultra, I would say anything more than 100 is fun. That time you're doing, you're pushing too much, but then at the end of the day, it's fun. That's what ultra is all about.
Okay. You have conquered so many peaks. You have conquered so many distances. Do you have fears, and what fears do you have? You still have fears?
No, not fears. I've always had a good team, so I always knew, in case things go wrong. So no fears as such.
You have no fears.
You cannot, once you feel that you have seen it, you've come so close to the Almighty. So no fears after that.
So you're not scared of, let's say, snakes or animals or fire or none of that.
No, there's nothing to be afraid of those things.
Okay, awesome. This is interesting. Okay, in order of preference of diet, do you like vegetarian, non-vegetarian, vegan, fruitarian, or dry fruit based diets? I mean, in order of preference.
Non-veg, veg, fruitarian, anything after that. But non-veg, yes.
Awesome. What is your one favorite location ever where you have raced?
Raced, I would say Laltra. That route I've seen so many times and very, very nostalgic memories, So has to be Laltra.
Wow, not
Triple one. Pardon?
Not Boston, but it's Laltra.
Yeah, Boston was more of a group event and all. Laltra was all solitude, nobody running ahead or behind you because there's so much of distance. So it was all on your own.
Okay.
And lifetime memories.
Many altitudes and weathers. Which weather do you like the most for training and racing? Weather.
Training, racing. See, racing and training is different. For training, I would prefer high altitude because it's very beneficial for your health.
Okay.
But then for racing, anything in plains, Boston and all was super fun. I mean, the kind of atmosphere which is there, we can't compare it. Can't express as well.
Nice. Okay. Next question. I've seen you are active on almost all the social media platforms. In order of preference, which are your favorites? Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, if you're there.
So yeah, you've already said the same thing. Insta, LinkedIn, and YouTube and Facebook.
Okay, in the same order. No change.
Same order, yeah.
When TikTok was there, did you try TikTok?
No, I didn't.
You did not. Okay.
I was never on TikTok.
Why? If I may ask, why? Why not?
I don't know. I think I was too old for TikTok or too immature, whatever. I mean, that's a personal perception.
Okay. If it comes back, would you join TikTok?
I may join because I saw it somewhere. TikTok was really booming, and I thought that's a good platform to be. But I didn't join it.
Okay. Would you, if you have to make a dance video or a lip sync, would you do it, or would you do motivate? How would you motivate people on TikTok if you've thought about it?
TikTok. Yeah, I remember my sister-in-law mentioning that I need to have some motivational videos or some educational videos. So I'll do it. I've got no hang-ups.
Right. Okay. Okay. What is your favorite sports nutrition brand? Sports nutrition, like
favorite. I think I'll go with Fast and Up.
Okay. What is your favorite?
Yeah, I'm an influencer for Fast and Up. I've been using their products.
Okay. I am too. So I like that brand.
Correctly.
Okay. What is your favorite shoes and apparel brand? Like maybe Nike, Adidas, Reebok, Puma, or
right,
or various other brands.
For apparels, I would go for Nike. For shoes, I go for Adidas Boost. That's I've been wearing for quite some time.
For all your marathons, also you wear that shoes?
Yeah, marathons I wear for. Yes, for Boston I wore them. For Ultra also. Yes, I would wear them. But then for qualifier I used to wear. There used to be a brand called Adidas Takumi Same. They used to have one model for that. But then it was not for longer duration. Only for short day only used to work. So
okay.
Yeah, Adidas Boost is the brand.
Okay, last two questions. Okay, what is your favorite bike brand or cycle brand or trainer brand?
I would say Trek.
Trek is your favorite. Okay, awesome. Last question. What time do you wake up and what time do you sleep during your training season?
Okay, training, I would wake up, I would start about 5:15, 5:30.
Okay.
Those times I sleep also by, last time will be 10 o'clock. if I'm in proper training. Not even 10, at times 9, 9:30. And mornings I'm up. So I get adequate sleep, that's for sure.
That's awesome. I am sure your family must be having a little bit of hard time adjusting to this kind of a routine. Thank you so much, Colonel Rommel, for being here, taking your time out, sharing your candid stories. I am so hopeful and grateful to you, and hopeful because a lot of people will get inspired by hearing your stories and what can be achieved. Thank you so much. You have any parting words? Please feel free to shoot.
No, thanks so much, Nishant. It's very encouraging to see young people like you taking this journey of educating people, motivating people, especially in the present COVID times, And I think people should learn from it after just listening to it. Should not end. You should learn, try and explore. The more you explore, the better it is. Even if you don't sustain, if you don't like it, don't continue. No harm. But then keep exploring, keep trying. You'll find something good out of it for sure. Thank you so much, Nishant, for inviting.
So much, guys. Thank you for tuning in.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to my channel, try Fantry, click on the bell icon, and I will see you in the next video. Train, endure, conquer.